Let's talk about Tactical Breach Wizards. This is a new turn-based strategy title from developer Suspicious Developments. I first learned about this game from Steam's Next Fest, and I included it in a video that featured a number of games that caught my attention. Out of all the games that I ended up playing, Tactical Breach Wizards made a strong impression, and I was pretty excited for the full release. And now that it's here, I decided to dive in to see how the other acts played out. In short, it's great. The big draw to the gameplay found here in Tactical Breach Wizards is the speed. You can complete most levels in under a few minutes as long as you are utilizing the different abilities of your squad efficiently. There is always an optimal path to find because each of these levels can be considered a puzzle room. Before you breach any of these rooms, you are able to properly assess the situation and also the different enemies and their locations. Everything is set, so there won't be any real adjustments. The only thing that you can change is the character that breaches, and sometimes you can change the different locations if a separate room is available for you to breach. Now, as you're making your way through a room and you're going through your turn, you have the ability of foresight, and this allows you to see the outcome of your choices. Now, if your decision making happens to be poor and you're not satisfied with those decisions, you can rewind. And you're able to rewind as many times as you want during a turn, but once you close out your turn, you have to live with your choices, so just bear that in mind. One of the reasons why I believe that this game is so brisk are the squad members. Each of them have their own abilities and they're all multifaceted, so they don't just serve one purpose. Every character in this game can be a real threat. I'm going to briefly break down the characters, starting with Zan and Jen, who are the characters you're going to control during the first act. Zan is what I consider your prototypical soldier. His primary ability does damage, but it can also knock back enemies. During the first act, he gains an ability to provide teammates with an extra action, which will help you complete stages quickly. He also has a sentry ability known as Predictive Bolt, and this is best used when reinforcements are called to a set area. Reinforcements in this game are identified by a red silhouette at a door and opening, and I really feel like Predictive Bolt is an amazing ability early on, and once you're able to level the skill up, it can practically down most enemies on the first shot. It's insane how much damage it does. Later on, he gains the ability to throw out clones, and these can serve as a distraction, or they can be an extra source of damage, or they can also complete certain tasks for you, like pressing buttons or boarding up entryways on your behalf. So while he is the prototypical soldier character, he's also really good in support as well. Jen is a Storm Witch, and her abilities mostly focus on pushing enemies into obstacles or each other. She gains a Chain Bolt ability early on that will push multiple enemies into different directions, and these push abilities can be used in conjunction with Zan's Predictive Bolt, so you can do a ton of damage to multiple enemies in 1 or 2 turns. She also, I believe, has the highest mobility in regard to all the different characters, and later gains the use of a broom, which allows her to exit windows and reposition quickly, so she can be seen as a flanker early on. She's just effective in almost everything that she does, and the fact that she has a grenade that can literally knock enemies into different directions is really useful. I think she's probably one of my favorite characters in the game. Now, as you progress, you're going to meet new squad mates, and the game is going to constantly throw you into scenarios where you are required to combine abilities to complete objectives. I don't think there was a single moment where I believe that a certain set of characters did not mesh. Every character was satisfying to control, and there are standalone challenge missions and survival challenges that you can play that will help you further familiarize yourself with these characters. You also have the ability to replay missions once you've completed them, and here you can actually utilize different lineups, which I think is really entertaining and can really trivialize some of the earlier missions. This is one of those rare instances of a strategy game in which I did not favor one character. Now, while I did love Jen, I really liked all of them. Banks, Rion, and Dahl are all characters that I'm usually hesitant to play as in other strategy titles because they more than likely only serve a singular purpose, but here, each of these characters can be a game changer on their own. Dahl in any other strategy title would serve as a frontline defender, but because of her ability to swap and charge multiple times, you can devastate an entire room of enemies before ever needing assistance. And the swap ability to me is kind of broken because not only can you swap with enemies and teammates, you can swap with objects as well, which is insane to me. Banks is a necromancer who can create death doors to eliminate elite targets. All you have to do is knock them into it, which to me is kind of broken because there are enemies in this game that are just like devastating to go up against. And then you just set up a death door and you knock an enemy into it and then they're gone for good. Doesn't matter what their health's at. They're just dead now. It's crazy. You can do it to bosses as well, which I thought was really entertaining. She can also resurrect characters, and the cool thing about this is that let's say a character is just low on health and mana, and you want to help them get back to full, just shoot them in the head. That's how she resurrects characters, and then they're back with full mana and abilities. It is probably one of my favorite abilities in the game. It's also really entertaining when you're just like shooting at fully healthy characters. Rion is a character that can throw spore bottles to poison or confuse enemies. He can also turn into a dog and bite, which will turn enemies rabid. And the interesting thing about the bite ability is that once you change, he can go to almost any enemy in the area. They don't even have to be in his line of sight, which is amazing because if you just use his bite ability and then swap to his other attacks in his human form, you have so much more mobility and movement. It is so much fun using him. And I was not a fan at first of the pull ability until I realized that once you upgrade it, you can not only do damage, you can dizzy, you can also poison. I really feel like here, these are the type of characters that are given so much depth that you really don't need more than 5. I was expecting like maybe 10 or so characters because that's how a lot of strategy games roll. They want to give you this really broad range here, but there's only 5 here, and that's all you really need. Some characters that you find in other strategy titles will have, 1 or 2 of them that's overpowered. But here, everyone is overpowered, especially when you level them up, and also when you get the hang of how every character operates. Missions that appear daunting on the surface are probably going to be the ones that you complete quickly because they are pretty much set up to showcase your team's abilities. Like all good strategy titles, Tactical Breach Wizard scales in complexity as you make your way through the different acts. Now, I mentioned this before, but I believe that this game is really accessible, and I would say overall, it's not a difficult title. I think the only time I found myself second guessing my decisions was probably the final mission, which, by the way, multi-tiered, it's very fun, but that final section was kind of a brain teaser and really gave me cause to pause about what I was doing. It's probably the hardest part of the game. But beyond that, I think you're going to be breezing through most levels and acts pretty quickly. But if you find the game to be too easy, you can adjust the difficulty and add modifiers to increase difficulty because I'm aware that there are some sadists out there who demand a challenge when they take on a strategy game, and I appreciate those people. The gameplay found here in Tactical Breach Wizards is a lot of fun, and I believe it has more than enough depth to satisfy fans of the genre. Due to its brisk pace, it definitely does not overstate its welcome. Now, while the gameplay had me hooked, I honestly think the most impressive aspect of Tactical Breach Wizards is its narrative, and yes, this is a story-driven title. The writing found in this game, in my opinion, is fantastic. It's sharp, it's funny, it's informative, and I think my favorite part is that the character interactions that you find here, they come off as natural. There's nothing really forced here, and I really enjoyed the squad mate banter before breaching an area or when you're wrapping up a mission and you're seeing these characters just generally give each other a hard time. Every character has their moment to shine, and one of the things I really enjoyed was that as you're making your way through the game, you're going to encounter missions that are set in a specific character's dream. Not only are these missions impactful gameplay-wise because you do get really useful skills, but they provide important exposition on these characters and really show their motivations and fears. It's not all fun in games. These characters are deeply affected by their past, some of them are traumatized by it, and overall these dream scenarios ended up being my favorite missions in the game because they can really help you understand how a character controls, and it also allows you to better connect with these characters so that dual purpose is really appreciated. I was also not expecting the level of detail in the world building found here. This kind of blew my mind because you're given information as you progress through the story, and like the character interactions, it's all really natural, but you also get a map that you can utilize that will allow the player to draw connections to characters, events, and locations to ensure that you're paying attention and to ensure that you don't get lost. I'm honestly hoping that this game does well because I would love another game set in this world. I believe it's refreshing to play a game that features both fun gameplay and a strong narrative. I feel like being able to nail these two aspects really help elevate Tactical Breach Wizards in my book, because there's far too many indie titles that I've played where there's strong, innovative gameplay, but it doesn't have a really interesting narrative that really catches you, or you're getting into one of these like deep introspective narratives that feature really simplistic gameplay, and it's kind of a letdown to see that one was cared about more than the other. And I really like the fact that here with Tactical Breach Wizards, the developers were able to nail both, and I really appreciate that. What's really funny is that this is the title that I randomly stumbled upon while looking at demos to play. When I first saw it, I wanted to dismiss it, but because it had a really unique demo and then I saw some impressions online that were really positive, I thought that maybe this would be really good, and I'm glad I played it because it really is. I didn't think a Wizard with Gun strategy title would be one of my favorite games of the year, but it is. I'm also a sucker for globetrotting thrillers, and that's what this is as well. It just also happens to have a killer sense of humor. Scenarios and challenges in this game are replayable, and there's even a mission editor to allow players to create their own levels. So if you happen to complete the game and all of its challenges, you can then take a look at what the community has to offer. Who knows? Maybe some people have thrown in some crazy mech challenges with rocket turrets, because why not? For 20 bucks, there's a lot to this game, and like I said, it's one of my favorite indie titles of this year, and I cannot recommend it enough. If you happen to have picked up Tactical Breach Wizards, let me know how you feel about the game in the comments, because that's gonna do it for this video. If you happen to like the content, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing, and if you made it this far, one random comment is gonna get a copy of this game on Steam. I'm Ken from Pixelated Thoughts, and I'll talk to you next time.